Well, welcome everyone to our Tuesday, October the 17th, 2023 session in our series on the emerging digital economy and context. I'm Richard Dasher. I direct the U.S. Asia Technology Management Series. It's our pleasure and privilege to put on this series, and I want to thank our member companies for their financial support, which allows us to do all of our programs. Today, I'm joining you not from in front of a Stanford pillar, but from Delhi, where it is exactly 5 a.m. in the morning. And I'm here with my colleague, Dr. Amit Kapoor, who is the honorary chair of the Institute for Competitiveness in India. And Amit is also the CEO of the Indian Council on Competitiveness. He is on the adjunct faculty at the Harvard Business School, as well as teaching courses with me at Stanford. And we're just delighted to be able to work together, or I'm delighted to be able to work with Amit on a number of different topics, ranging from regional economic development to nutrition to the economic impact of the COVID vaccination program here. We are conducting a lot of our activities under the name the India Dialogue. We had a big 2-day conference at Stanford last February where we brought in over 40 speakers, and we will repeat that on February 29 and March 1st of 2024. We also are doing monthly webinars in the morning California time at 8 a.m. California time, and so 8:30 p.m. India time. And our very next one will be next week with Dr. Sean Randolph, the head of the Bay Area Council Economic Institute. And they've done a study about the Indian ecosystem and its impact on Silicon Valley innovation. So I'm delighted that today we can talk about the Universal Payments Interface System, which is a major program in India to digitalize the way that people conduct financial transactions, changing things from a largely cash society and the kind of impact that it's having on life here. So, Amit, you've got some slides, and I want to welcome you and thank you very much for getting up so early for this. Amit, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for the kind introduction. And it's absolutely a pleasure to join you during this seminar and webinar. So, like as you were talking about, and it's absolutely a pleasure to collaborate with you. It's an honor for me. In fact, the journey has been just absolutely fantastic. But just delving quickly into the topic for the day. So when we are talking about unified payment interface, this has been one of the most interesting innovations that India has seen over the last decade or so. So the whole idea was something that got started in 2013. And what we are really seeing now is a huge positive impact across the board. And that is what I'm really looking at talking about. If you really look at the whole aspect of the UPI, there's something very interesting, like UPI's rapid growth in India has triggered some kind of a butterfly effect, because there are huge positives that we are seeing across the board. And those positives include in terms of how it has enabled businesses, in terms of rise of unique business models, rise or creating unique ideas and propositions. It has enabled what you would call as social progress. It has improved quality of life of people or ease of living of people, because there were a huge number of unbanked people that actually existed to what we are really moving into now, wherein you've been able to increase the level of financial inclusion and penetration. It has improved social progress across the country. And there is huge sets of data which suggest that it has actually had a positive impact. Then, of course, if you really look at the idea of UPI, it started with what you would call as the JAM Trinity, the Jan Dhan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity, because that is what was the basis for what was actually being seen or done. And there were multiple things that actually happened at the same time. Of course, not everything can actually be said it was the government. There were unique sets of ideas that were percolating. There were there was this huge rise of mobile penetration and things. But if you
So,
really,
Amit, let me stop you real quickly. Uh, uh, Jan Dan Yojana. Uh,
yes.
what is that? I know Adar. That's the biometric kind of recording of information that really was the ID system for everyone across India.
So exactly. So that's an important question, and my next slide is exactly about Jan
Ah,
Dhan
okay, okay, okay.
Mobile. So then, of course, UPI has improved financial inclusion, a reduction in cash reliance, and then, of course, yeah, UPI is now really having a lot of international attention because there are a lot of people who are wanting, a lot of countries who are trying to adopt a similar kind of technology or a similar kind of a stack across the world. But if you really look at it, the first step was, if you in the Indian context, was the Jan Dhan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity. And this is something that started in 2014, 2015, when the government of India announced that you have to really look at unique identification. You have to look at the what you call bank accounts for people, and then mobile was the mobile penetration that actually happened. So if you really look at it, like the first step towards this financial inclusion, DPT had the first purpose was to really see that how government subsidies and pensions or other entitlements can actually go to people across the board. Uh, can there actually be a stopping of leakages that can actually happen? So that was the direct benefit transfer. Uh, that was looked at. So that was what you would call as the Jan Dhan idea. That can we create the banking system for the unbanked? Because if he was not doing that, that means there was absolutely no access to the financial system. And India had huge low levels of banking penetration that existed. And this happened because of the infrastructural issues, because India is so diverse, 600,000 villages, you cannot actually open up banks in 600,000 villages. It actually creates a very different kind of an issue. So how do you really take banks to people? And this is here that the rise of internet that started happening in the 1990s, and now this is where you are able to create something unique. Of course, it also looked at the enhanced transparency in financial transactions and governmental disbursements. It was a very well-known fact that close to about 90% of the money that was actually being invested for the poor or for the underprivileged was actually getting either leaked, or it was more towards what you call the cost of implementation of the program. So this is something which just removed a lot of issues that actually existed. And then, of course, it empowered individuals to manage their finances more effectively, and especially women, because if you really look at it, uh, India is a very interesting society which has a huge, what you call, male dominance that would possibly exist or existed. Now, this is where if you're able to empower women through either the banking system, wherein they're able to take their own decisions, this was something very important. So that is where the direct benefit transfer also became a very important thing. And that is where the banking system or creation of accounts was the thing. So this laid the foundation for economic growth by encouraging savings and investments through formal channels. And then, of course, as you look at it, India has had a huge informality within the system. And this was also the starting point wherein you're actually trying to formalize the system that exists. Because by certain set of numbers, what we do know or what we could guess, that 50% of the Indian economy was in the informal system until about 2013, 2014. So now, how do you really formalize? So then banking becomes very important. Transaction through the banking system becomes very important. And then, so the first thing was the direct benefit transfer that actually had to be done. And this
But
started,
actually, Amit, let me go back because
yeah,
I think this is an absolutely incredible scale problem that the government had to take care of. You create a zero balance transfer, a zero balance bank account for every person. And most people, or a lot of people, are not literate. And so you had to have biometric means of identification of the person, right? That's the Adar program. And to be able to bring this within a period of what, a year or two, 2 or 3 years?
So,
into the system was just on a scale of probably what, 800 or 900 million people.
oh, so if you really look at the Aadhaar thing, Aadhaar is something which was a very important thing to have happened
Yeah, but
because
that and also the Jamdan, right? To create the
absolutely.
bank accounts for all these people. That's, you know,
So just to give you the numbers in perspective, so when you talk about the unique identification that was getting created, that is the Aadhaar account, close to 99% of Indians today have an Aadhaar account. In fact, the certain numbers are that 99.9% of Indians have an Aadhaar account today. So that means
so we're
you're
really talking 1.3 billion people.
exactly. But then this is something that started way back. It is not something that started in 2013. The process for
Okay.
unification started much earlier. It is a question
Okay.
of like how the government in the new context or the new government saw at that point in time, the new BJP government, how did they see the possibility in terms of expanding this program and what they were able to do with this program? So there, of course, with the change of administration, there was some unique thinking that actually did emerge. But of course, we have to give it to Prime Minister Manmohan Singh at that point in time who created this, or the idea actually happened during his tenure. But then the whole push towards Aadhaar happened 2013, and there was a big leap that actually happened. But then again,
Okay.
Aadhaar was just the beginning of the system because since Aadhaar was available, what you were able to do is that you were able to link it to your bank accounts. Because then again, because Aadhaar as a unique identification existed, it reduced the level of know your customer, what do you call, uh, things that had to be done. Because otherwise, opening a bank system would mean that I'll have to go to the bank, I'll have to fill up the forms, I'll have to, what I will give my picture. There would be other sets of identification that I have to give. And it created a unique set of problems for people because people in villages were not able to go. And suddenly there is this unique identification. What it enables is that I'm able to actually open an account with a single thumbprint or my fingerprints that are actually happening because I'm uniquely identified in the system. I'm already verified by the governmental system, so I can open a bank account fairly quickly. And in fact, it just took about a minute to open a bank account. So it just got reduced so dramatically in terms of opening an account. So today, if I actually want to open a new bank account or a new service on my mobile, which is related to UPI, on that interface, it'll just take me about a minute because I have to just cross-link it with the Aadhaar. I'm verified and my bank account is all set. And this is what actually happened. So this is the power or the beauty of the system in terms of how it actually went through. Uh, but of course, if you really look at it, there was this scheme, as I was saying, the Jan Dhan Yojana, wherein it simplified the account opening process or minimizing paperwork. And it also eliminated the minimum account balance requirement because suddenly you're able to actually have an account on the system with a zero balance. Because until that time, the thing was that you will need to have a certain amount of money, even if it was small money. Because we have to realize, like, even if it was $10, there was a huge problem there because India is not a super rich country. Like, because when you really look at the larger sets of people, there are about 900 million people even today who are actually on the support system in some way or the other. So that means these were the people who are not in a position to keep any sets of huge bank balances in the thing. So, or in your accounts. And then the next thing was there was this whole leveraging the widespread use of mobile phones. The biggest thing that actually happened in India, if you really look at that, started in the 1990s, but it's really scaled up towards the 2013, 2014. And this is where we have to give credit to companies like Reliance or say Airtel, because what happened is that whole huge penetration of mobile phones happened. There were multiple things that were actually happening at the same time. So one was that, of course, the entry barriers to acquiring a phone got severely reduced. Because when you were really talking about, say, the cost of a mobile phone, for a smartphone, it was something like, if you really look at Apple today, it is still a very expensive phone. But today in India, you're able to actually get a smartphone for less than about, to close to about $40 to $50. And you are able to make these transactions on a fairly simple Android device. So there was this whole open system that actually happened through Android. 83% of users in India are still Android. And that is actually happening because the barriers to entry just got reduced. And then there was this, of course, there was this huge shift that happened that suddenly the prices plummeted for the services. So the prices for internet services got so low that it is just absolutely what I call next to free, if you might actually ask me. Today, the cost of maintaining an internet connection on your mobile, which is a 5G connection, is less than 1,000 rupees for a year, which will give me access to something like 3 GB of data on a daily basis. In fact, it goes to as low as 365 rupees a year, which is about $4.50 for a year. Richard, you had a question.
No, that was my point. Is 1,000 rupees a year is about $4.50 a year.
Yeah, 1,000 would be about $12, $13, but
$12. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you really, but look at the kind of access that you're able to do, and it has, and this whole penetration, like of internet has done something unique. It has changed the way people consume information. It has changed the way people actually look at entertainment. Because suddenly this mobile penetration, like Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, mobile, UPI is important. But what it also did for the people was clear access to information. It gave them clear access to entertainment. Because today you will see people on the streets that they're just enjoying small videos or Facebook or WhatsApp or movies on their mobile phone. So suddenly the theater was in your hand. It had a huge transformational effect on the society. So today what you're also seeing because of this penetration is that you're able to take classroom to the kids on these phones itself or through the tablets. In fact, when just before the session started, like Kimberly made a very important remark that this reminds us of COVID. But this whole penetration of internet services, of mobiles, of Aadhaar, Jan Dhan, created a system wherein you were able to give access to learning to people who were sitting at homes because of the lockdown. It was a brutal 18-month period. So you were able to give that. The second thing was that you were able to suddenly bank across the board. And I'm not saying that everything's right with the system or whatever. There are issues, there could be challenges that need to be taken care of. But there was something very important that happened. So if you really look at what you call as the Jan Dhan Aadhaar mobile trinity, so there is this whole banking thing. The Aadhaar is the unique identification thing and the mobile access thing. This is something which is very, very powerful that has actually got created. And if you really look at it, nearly 55% of the total bank accounts opened in the world are actually happened after because of the Jan Dhan Aadhaar mobile. So close to about 500 million accounts have actually opened until about 2023 in the last 10 years. That look at the kind of penetration that we are really talking about. And then, of course, so digital ID and Aadhaar contribute to remarkable increase in financial inclusion as well. Because now suddenly people are identified, everybody is able to get banked and things. And most of the schemes that the government actually has, you've been able to move to a direct benefit transfer. Instead of serving goods or taking goods to them, you're suddenly able to say, this is the money that we can transfer into your account. You are able to use the way you want to actually use it. Or you can actually use it for buying whatever the government is saying, but you are able to reduce the leakages that would typically have happened during the earlier days. Now coming to UPI, which is because this was the important stack that actually happened on which UPI was built. Because had this not happened, UPI would not have happened. Because that is the fundamental layer that started the universal payment interface. And if you really look at UPI, it's a real-time payment system, something which was started in 2016, a very young program, just about 7-8 years, but it has had a transformational effect, as you would see. So it was launched by the National Payment Corporation in India because it was a government of India thing wherein they became at the center of the thing. This is where the stack actually got created. Of course, it was in direct competition to people like the Visas of the world or the MasterCards of the world who feel fairly flustered because suddenly there is a system which is a zero-cost system. And here is a system which is able to do transactions which are absolutely at a minimalistic level. In terms of you are able to do a 1 rupee transaction today. Like the power of this interface is so huge. I'm talking about pre-pandemic days. In fact, I was just trying to look at, I went to a place called in Gujarat, wherein you have the Gujarat Narmada Fertilizer Corporation. I just went to for a visit there. That was the first locality which became what I call cash-free or cashless. And that is where you were able to pay for a single packet of, say, biscuits, which was possibly for 2 rupees with your mobile phone. And suddenly you would realize that how powerful and how enabling the system is, because I'm able to use my mobile to pay. I don't really need to carry a wallet or whatever and things. So what you're really doing with, say, Apple Wallet or whatever, but still you need a credit card. Here you're directly transferring everything from a bank account. You're not creating an additional interface of, say, something like a credit system being there. And then, of course, if you really come back to this whole UPI, it operates as an interbank fund transfer system. So I'm able to, everything just goes out of my account. Within 3 seconds, it gets transferred to the other person, and it is absolutely safe. We have not found any evidence until now for any compromise of the system. If at all there is a compromise, we have to realize it is because of the mistake that I can actually do. Of course, there would be people smart enough to actually extract my information. They will extract it from me. But once they do it, of course, you are vulnerable. And but the question is, if you're keeping it safe, there are no compromises that we have seen have actually happened to the system. There could have been some leakages in terms of information on Aadhaar at certain point in time. But I think over a period of time, the system has become a lot more robust, a lot more safer, and it is now virtually impenetrable in terms of how things are. Of course, there are going to be smart hackers who will be able to do anything and everything. But at least at this point in time, the safety is fairly high. But how does UPI work? Like, it's a very simple process wherein you're saying that the request is initiated. It's a complete process from, say, one person initiates the request, and then, of course, it goes to the beneficiary bank account. So the UPI stack is just enabling, or what you would call as the UPI server, which is actually held by National Payment Corporation of India. It enables the transaction to happen. But the biggest thing here is that these transactions are not having any cost implication for the customer. In fact, even for a typical transaction, the cost is so low that it is less than 1 paisa, which is 1/100th of a rupee that you're really talking about. So that is where the transaction costs are. So that is actually creating a lot of, in fact, just recently, I just heard, just about day before yesterday, the MasterCard CEO has said that this system is creating so much of a challenge for them. But because your costs are so high, you're enabled differently. But in terms of, say, evolution of UPI, it started in 2014 with Jandan Aadhaar Mobile. Your unified payment interface is launched in 2016. Then there are new players that actually happen. So you see the launch of, say, the Google Pay, Bheem application, and so on and so forth. So, and now what we are seeing is that UPI is getting expanded to other countries. Well, there are 5 countries which are now using India's UPI system for Indians to pay. So if I go to UAE today, I really don't need a credit card. I'm able to pay directly through my phone at retail outlets in Dubai or the United Arab Emirates. That's again a very powerful thing to actually happen. Not very, very penetrated right now, but something very interesting that is happening and taking shape. But this is where the numbers actually become very important. Richard, I could see that you had a question.
Yeah, I have a question for you. So after UPI was introduced, Google Pay introduces an app in India.
Yes.
So UPI was not the national government taking over business away from, in some ways, it's a classic case of disruption, right? The credit card companies take 2 or 3% of every transaction for their own revenue. And so if you have something that's less than 1/100th of a rupee, I guess that would be taken by this national payment organization.
Exactly, to maintain the system.
To maintain the system.
Maintain the system. That's
But
the
still,
point
you've disrupted the existing credit card business. But then how does Google Pay work on top of this?
So what happens
I
is,
mean,
like, Google, because the government did
uh,
not want to get into the customer interface part of it, because this is where they say,
okay,
like, this enables the system, let people create business models around it. In fact, Google Pay
okay,
is just one of those people who operate. There are 83 operators as of today who enable transactions on UPI. It's a very, very competitive market. So there have been enterprises like Bharat Pay or Paytm or what I call Bheem is one of the applications that also exists that was done by the government, but they do not really push it forward.
Yeah.
So everything is just running on top of it. So you were able to create models. In fact, today the richest companies in India are, say, Bharat Pay and Paytm, and they run on this stack on top of this. But the beauty here is in terms of the number of transactions that were actually happening. So just look at it, like the last aggregated number that I was able to find, there were 9.4 billion transactions that actually happened uh, in a month over UPI. So that means effectively each one of us in India are doing about 7 transactions a month on UPI. And it is rising at a crazy rate right now. And this is happening because
Yeah,
of
Amit, let me ask you one more question, kind of on the system itself.
yeah.
If you'd go back one slide to the slide that shows the sort of payment flow, one more back. This NPCI, is that a state-owned bank or a government organization, or what is it?
It's a government organization. So this is what
Okay.
controls the information that actually you're
Uh-huh.
sitting. So they just enable the transaction to happen. So they have that identification system wherein they are able to understand who's the person sending the money, who it has to go to, because it gets
Yeah, okay.
verified. Yeah, that's where it is. So the
Okay.
government.
So one possible group being disrupted would be the credit card companies. But how did this impact the business of the banks?
Oh, not at all, because the banking system was always involved into this. But what it
Okay.
only did for the banks is that it increased the number of banking accounts for them. Of course, there
Right.
was an initial thing that, oh, this is actually going to be very expensive, or we will have to actually take care of what I call accounts which have no money and whatever. There's a cost involved or whatever. But I think over a period
Yeah.
of time, the banks realize that there is hardly any cost in maintaining these accounts because you've been able to reduce the cost of acquisition of the customer itself, because the very process of verifying was a very expensive process, and suddenly it just got removed. So the cost of initial setup of an account was reduced to nearly zero. So that
And
means
a lot of the paperwork here about bank accounts has to do with collecting enough customer information to be able to identify money laundering or organized crime, that kind of thing. So if you've got the system that verifies that this is an individual, you know, uh, then I suppose that reduces the cost for the banks a lot.
yes, because if you really look at the Aadhaar idea, the unique identification, because everything is on top of Aadhaar. Because today, everything that I have is linked to Aadhaar. So when you say, even if I'm somebody, assuming that I've done some financial laundering or whatever, because my Aadhaar is in what I call attached to my what do you call the code with the tax authorities, or what is called as the permanent account number. So it is actually linked. So if I make a mistake there, I'm actually stacked up here. If I've actually missed some payment, it is again linked to my Aadhaar. So it is becoming
Yeah.
a common thing. So it is more like, I think, a social protection number, or what you call as in the US, the social security number. So it's
The social
possible.
security number. Yeah.
Yes. So that this is possibly there itself, and something very unique that is actually happening. But should we just move ahead on this,
Yeah,
Richard?
go ahead. And we'll come back. There are things I want to ask, but we'll keep going.
And of
So the
course,
number of transactions was just exploding.
oh yes, they're exploding every day. So just look at it. Like today, if I actually go on an auto rickshaw, I don't need cash. In fact, today the problem is of a very different nature. If you're holding cash, it is problematic, because if I'm using a service like, say, a home delivery of food, assuming that I actually use a service like Big Basket, which is a food delivery thing, they will not have cash in their hands. So everything has moved to an UPI based system. So today, you actually go to a roadside vendor who's selling fruits. He'll say, just send me the money through UPI. He does not want cash, because that keeps him so much more safer. And so that means the whole possibility of theft, everything just vanished. But again, coming back to this India stack thing, so there is this whole presence thing that you're really talking about, Aadhaar, then this is cashless. And on top of it, like there is this whole paperless layer of digital documentation. So what has happened now is that, like, uh, Richard, this is something very unique. Like, because I've been able to get identified, today I don't need a license in my pocket. In fact, just my interaction. So because everything is getting mapped to the system. So just day before yesterday, I was stopped by the cops, and they said they want to see whether my car is verified for pollution or not. The pollution certificate is there or not. He just pinned the number. He said you're all clear and you can just leave. But now the question is that and he wanted to see my license, and my license was actually on my mobile. My license is not there in physical format for me. So those are some very interesting things that are happening. So it is enabling, but of course, there is this overarching dependence on this obnoxious little device. So that is what is happening. So what is going to happen is that they are now becoming an extension of my arm or my hand, because they're really body components for you now, because you just can't survive with this. And this leads to a different sets of issues in terms of my dependence on technology. What does it do to my mind, and so on and so forth? What effects it can have on learning or human behavior? That's absolutely a different stream of interaction. But what we are really seeing is there's something very interesting that has happened in terms of moving ahead. But now talking about the impact of UPI. And this is where I just wanted to take a few minutes in terms of the impact. If you really look at it, UPI offers digital payments through various devices and across the board. And there are 9 billion monthly transactions. That's a huge set of transactions. And these transactions are increasing. In fact, every additional month, you see that those transactions are actually rising over a period of time, because more and more people are actually wading away from cash. This creates, so this is something very unique. What has happened is, and at least I'm convinced in my mind, that maintaining cash, if I'm somebody who is just maintaining a lot of cash or whatever, it is becoming impossible for me to spend that money. Because nobody's accepting it, or 99% of the people are just saying that, why don't you take it through the UPI interface? And then, of course, this low transaction cost facilitate microtransactions. Initially, the thing was that if you really look at credit card companies, what they would do is that if you're spending less than X amount of money, most of the shopkeepers will say that I'm not actually using this transaction, or I'm not enabling this transaction, or they will ask for 2 or 3% additional charge. And it still does happen across the board. I've seen that happening. But UPI is in just removing that whole idea. And then UPI allowed unbanked individuals to access financial services. This was a very powerful thing, because suddenly when you have UPI, everybody knows about my financial behavior. I'm what I call seen within the system. I exist, and now I'm able to actually get, say, loans as well. So you were this rise of NBFCs that have actually happened, this microcredit companies. And then, of course, these microcredit companies had their own sets of issues in the past, wherein they were supercharging. But now you're able to see as to how much is being charged by the microcredit companies as well. So those models are also changing. So what has happened is that this disruption has caused a lot of disruption in some of the financial sector players as well. So they have to really enable themselves or their models to not be exploitative, because initially you were able to charge quite a lot, but now you suddenly are visible in terms of what you're doing. And then, of course, UPI creates that disbursement of benefits. But the next thing is that, what does it do to businesses? It has a huge, powerful impact on businesses, because if you really look at this numbers, like so access to financial systems through UPI leads to easier credit. Because what we are seeing is that the percentage of loans via digital channels in the scheduled commercial banks increased from 1.43% to about 6%. That's something very, very interesting. And then, of course, the non-banking financial companies saw a substantial increase from 0.66% to 53%. So you're suddenly able to give those what I call loans, or you're able to understand the system. And UPI is a near instant payment system, digital payments enabled through enhanced security, et cetera, et cetera. But UPI and social progress, this is the most important thing as I see. Uh, because, like in a country like India, it becomes very important that we enable uh, women, or we actually give access to power to women, because being a society wherein it was a man dominated thing, all the money was something that the man was managing in a village or whatever, and then women were hugely or supremely dependent on the male counterpart. So that became, then it was not a, it changed the very relationships itself in terms of like how things were happening, because suddenly you have a bank account, I have the financial power, and I'm able to move ahead. So this is what happened. So if you really look at the new statistics, like women bank account ownership rose significantly to 79% from 53% in 2016. Huge penetration. If you really look at percentage of women who use digital payments increased from 11% to 22%. These are the statistics that are available, and it is rising at this point in time. Just a case in point, like there is this place called Kevadia. Uh, so what happens is like that is where women have got enabled into that whole interface. And near Kevadia, there are women who are tribal women who are collecting neem seeds. And the money that they initially used to go to these women would actually be given in cash. And husbands will possibly extract it from them for drinking, binging, or whatever. But now you have this money going into the bank. Look at the kind of financial empowerment it has actually created. It creates that independence, and hugely important. Uh, so if you read, these are a couple of cases which I just wanted to share in terms of like how women in Maharashtra have been able to improve their lives. So what happens is digital payments by customer help her further maintain steady bank balance, because suddenly it is going into her account. So what I'm saying here is access to money. This is money is power eventually, because that gives me that independence. But UPI and business, like this is where we were really talking about in terms of the whole digital payment landscape that exists in India. Because today UPI accounts for 68% of all payment transactions by volume, which is huge, because nearly everything's happening on top of it. So it's created that formalization of the system. Then roughly about 4.5 million individual companies have benefited to easier access to financial services. And then, of course, there was this whole digital locker, as I said earlier, when my documents are able to be kept there. But look at the kind of payment landscape that actually exists. So when you talk about India out here, there are so many companies. I've just named a few. There are close to 83 companies who are operating on the UPI stack for enabling transactions, and they've created models on top of it. In fact, if you really look at the volume of business, Phone Pay or Google Pay or Paytm, look at the volume of business in terms of value that is actually happening. This is crazy numbers as you would actually look at, and these are all in million rupees, like huge numbers that you're looking at how these transactions are happening over on top of it. Of course, there could be very small set of players as well who exist, but they are going to be some very specific players. There are some premium services that are getting developed on top of it, but that's the most interesting bit. But in terms of say UPI and emerging business, like the fintech sector itself boasts of 9 of the 21 billion dollar startups in India. So if you really look at unicorns, so 9 of them are actually here on the financial stack or on the UPI thing. And innovation and cost reduction, as you would see, is something very, very interesting, because Bharat Pay in itself, it removed 1 point fee transaction fee for the merchants. He said, like, why them? Because there's no need for, because there is no cost that is involved for it. So he's creating a different model in terms of how he actually wants to, what I call, make money, because he's getting into other sets of services that actually enable, because he has the information to really run it fast. And this is how the whole UPI and emerging businesses are actually just emerging. So there is this whole India stack, then UPI is Phone Pay, GPay, or then lending and personal finance companies that have happened. Insurance companies have actually happened on top of it. In fact, when you talk
So
about
Amit, let me stop you again, because the UPI system is based on individuals, and each individual having this Jan Dhan account, right? But
mm,
if you do you create a separate business account on this UPI system, or is it just continue to be paid to the individual?
so when you talk about, say, if I'm an individual who's a sole proprietor, I just need one account, so I can just do that.
Yeah, right.
But as a firm, no. As a firm, you'll have to create a different thing, but your transactions can actually get enabled into the firm account. Your firm account actually gets accessed through that system itself. So I can
Okay.
actually have my, what I call, many kind of accounts transacting across the board. It is not that it is just
Uh-huh.
one that transacts with the other kind. So there are
Yeah.
multiple levels at which it can actually operate.
So I also have to ask about the motivations of people to want to use this system instead of continue to use cash with each other. What is the nature of sales tax in India?
So, like this is a
Is,
very, very interesting question. So the tax is called the GST now, the Goods and Services Tax. And most of the transactions which are, say, on GST or whatever, the government is able to see as to what are the kind of transactions that are actually happening. And
uh-huh.
if there is somebody who's avoiding taxes, you will know that this is avoidance of tax and things. So what has happened is that, one, it has enabled to actually increase the tax compliance without a doubt. A larger number of people are actually filing their income tax returns right now, even if they are zero tax returns, but people have now moved into that direction. So wherein India is not a very high tax system, a lot of people don't pay taxes because they don't have the kind of money that to pay taxes. Close to just about 3 to 4% people pay taxes, about 8% of the people or 7% are filing income tax returns. But the question is that it has increased significantly over a period of time. But then when you are doing
So
these
people are making the decision that the convenience and the safety, nobody can steal your digital money out of your wallet, even if they do get your cell phone, then that is worth the possibility of being charged the GST.
I think so, and because especially like if you really look at, say, normal consumption goods, they are not so highly GST taxed or whatever that
Uh-huh.
it is going to be. So there are going to be items which are out of the ambit of GST, but there are certain things like if you're using a service on top of something, like say a food delivery service, a GST will
Yeah.
actually get levied on it because it's a service. Otherwise you can just go out and pick it up on your own. So the government is taxing that service. And I really
Yeah.
don't see anything wrong in doing it because, for a simple reason, if I'm actually trying to make things easier for myself, let that get taxed because that is, I'm paying for that service or whatever. That's where it is. But
Yeah, that's the rational balancing. Yeah.
exactly. So it needs to happen. But if you really look at
Okay.
e-commerce and MSMEs, there's something very interesting that has happened. So digital wallets account for 50% of e-commerce, or what you're calling as the UPI based services, or the money that is actually in my bank accounts. 50% of the transactions are happening through that. So credit cards are actually on their way out. Let me share a number with you. In fact, I'm sorry, I don't think I have it in my slides, but uh, on the total transactions, just about 3% of transactions on the complete thing is happening through MasterCard or Visa right now in the country. So they're a very small part of the system that we are seeing. But in terms of, I think the beauty of this thing is that there are a lot of people who are really seeing this as a force for enabling people. And now they're looking at adoption of the UPI kind of a project, or the government has now said this is open source. Anybody who wants to use it, please do use it. So what we are seeing is that there are pilots across the board that are happening in 10 countries. In fact, even Singapore is collaborating on fund transfer on this stack. If you really look at, say, partnerships with payment facilitators across the board, but there's the most important thing. It also has a foreign policy implication. A lot of people don't really look at it. But there was this, like when during this whole Ukraine war, the transactions that were actually happening on what would you call as the SWIFT system, they were able to get blocked. And now suddenly there were people across the board who said, like, why should we not have our own system? So UPI possibly creates that safety net as well, assuming that you get, because if you're able to create blockades, because then that means there are going to be challenges. In fact, China has moved into that direction as well, to create their own what I call SWIFT kind of a system wherein they want to reduce that dominance. So there is that whole international foreign policy thing that is actually happening. So in terms of say, if you really look at this, the India digital transformation journey, and this is my last slide actually, is the whole approach unbundles components to solve problems and identifies a common core. And in terms of like how you're able to create those solutions. And then of course, India supports the interportability. You're able to just, there are those open standards that have actually happened. And then you're also seeing one thing, like there was something very important that happened is how these principles were used for vaccination certificate and mapping vaccinations. So today, like when you talk about vaccination was such a big thing that happened within India, I was able to track it to my identification code, which got attached to my passport. So it was very simple on my phone that I have a vaccination certificate for COVID. So this system is actually enabling a lot of things for the citizens. And I see, because access to information for an individual citizen at a phone level is something which is very, very enabling. Because it actually empowers a person to and helps them take those decisions or rational decisions very quickly. But India has also used its G20 presidency for promoting digital public infrastructure. That was one of the biggest things for the G20 presidency, wherein they've said, okay, now they have tried to tell the G20 countries in terms of how it is and how, say, the what do you call African countries can possibly learn from what India has actually done through this system, how they can actually enable services on top of it. But this is what I really wanted to share in terms of prepared remarks. I think I've taken 50 minutes instead of 25 that you'd actually told me. I'm so sorry for that.
Well, I kept asking questions too. And I'd like to take the chair's privilege of asking a few more questions, and then we'll open it up to others in the meeting. So, first of all, the execution of this system is absolutely amazing when you consider the challenges of infrastructure and the sheer scale of the system, all the way back to the Aadhaar, getting a 12-digit identification number for every person. Older people, often their fingerprints don't take well. People who've worked with harsh chemicals for years typically don't have good fingerprints. I know that in other countries that are not as big as India, they've tried to implement things like the My Number system in Japan, and they had to stop because they were, or they've had to pause the implementation because they're having so much trouble with mistaken records. The wrong biometrics get sent to the wrong person. And so how was India able to execute this so well?
So, Richard, a very simple thing. Like when you really look at this process, it's not only fingerprints, it's also my retina scan that goes into the system.
Yeah.
So what happens is, assuming you don't have the fingerprints, which I'm not able to read, like that's true for my father as well, exactly to your point, that system does not read the fingerprints. So he has a retinal scan that is there in the system, and you're able to get verified through that. Because I'm told, or I'm made to understand, like your retinal scans are exactly similar to your fingerprint itself, because each one of us has a very different architecture in the eye in terms of how it looks like. So it's very unique. So that is where you have been able to actually do that. So we've not seen that people have got rejected because of that. So you have, because it is a biometric thing, so they wanted to actually create a biometric system that has happened. I'm sure there would be some other challenges that exist, like if you, and I really have to look at this answer, because you say if you are somebody who is having a physical ailment, and then how does that system actually work? But I'm sure it does work, and I've not looked at that, but I think that's an important question, because I have seen people who are able to work with the system in spite or despite of, say, a deformity if you actually have, or if you're specially able, then you are able to look into that or work on the system.
So the other question that I would have to ask is, Uh, was there any kind of concern, widespread concern in India about how much the government knows about people now?
So that's an important question. The government knows a lot. In fact, today I think the challenge in the whole democratic process is going to be that what is the kind of information that is actually getting stored in the system. Like, so even if you really talk about the mobile phone companies, they are able to track you on 300 different sets of parameters. They possibly know right now that I'm sitting in these 3-4 square foot area. If I'm
Yeah,
talking
they
to you,
probably know my hotel room. Yeah.
so they would possibly know that. But now the question is that at least the government has, we have not seen any evidence whatsoever right now that the government has misused this information, or this information has actually got leaked. Because the government is saying that there is nobody who's able to see this information. Of course, these systems are attached because if I'm doing a certain level of financial transactions and I'm not paying taxes, then that there would be a red flag that would actually possibly emerge. But there's nothing wrong in that. So it's just about understanding my income and my spends and my taxes. They are all getting stacked there, but it is not about that they're surveilling me. We have not seen any evidence of surveillance using this data, except on the idea of, say, whether we are paying our taxes or not. So they are able to understand the transaction that I have. But other than that, I've not seen any negatives. Of course, there were some huge initial reservations that people actually had, that you are going to have that surveillance thing. You'll actually have whether India is going to have a China kind of a process in terms of good behavior index of a person or whatever. No, that's not happening. It is not going to happen in India for sure. It will just create a chaos of an order that the government will not be able to handle.
So, is there a lot of phishing going on now to get people to reveal their information or their numbers? Has that kind of crime increased?
Oh, definitely. When you say phishing in terms of a very specific thing that will happen on the internet, but there are many other things that are actually happening that people will, and the way the technology is changing. So today, as you know, like one of the biggest scams that we are seeing on the system is that people are recording your voice and they're able to emulate your voice on the through artificial intelligence. So they are giving calls to people to send money to a certain bank account or whatever. So those things are happening on the UPI Aadhaar system. I'm very safe until the time I do not give my OTP. So for every transaction effectively that I'm doing, either I'm doing a retina scan on my system, or I'm doing a thumb scan on my system or whatever, or I am actually pushing something. Assuming my phone gets stolen, one, it is very difficult to be cracked. But in case it is stolen and I've reported it, everything is getting blocked very within seconds. And once it is blocked, to really open, even if I go onto a new phone, my transactions are disabled for 24 hours. So that means the presumption is that you have to create a safety net that those things are not happening. But we still do get jacked up. We do still do mistakes because there are people who will end up giving their OTP to a people. They will actually, because I'm sitting on another system, I log in, and I try to say a password or whatever, and the password is leaked. And then suddenly there is that whole second authentication system that you just call and you give that OTP. And then people are able to do the transaction. So, but there is a certain leakage that happens from my side as a customer. Then those transactions are going through, not something wherein they've been able to penetrate the system and then do a system-wide leakage. I make a mistake as a customer, only then it is happening. But yes, I think that this is where the education of the customer becomes exceedingly important. And what is happening is there are a lot of educational things that are happening in terms of like informing the customer that don't do this or whatever, because this is how people will do it. Because there's this very interesting movie that has happened in India, or a program called Jamtara. Jamtara is a location which is the hub of all these phishing kind of a thing. So there are people who find unique ways of extracting information. But I think right now we are not seeing something which is absolutely at an alarming rate or whatever.
Okay. So people are writing all kinds of interesting comments, and some of them are direct messaging to me, and some of them are comments for everyone. But one of the last ones to come in is from Ro, who points out that if you're a visitor with no Indian bank account and no Indian phone, now it's quite a hassle in India to go around and try to buy things. Um, I've had that experience in China where you can't get WeChat Pay if you don't have a Chinese bank account. So this is an interesting kind of anti-globalization that's happened through the development of these national systems.
So, Richard, this is an important point, and I agree that there are going to be challenges for somebody who is visiting. But of course, like the credit card system still works. Not that that system does not work. So you can pay through the credit card system, and most of the locations will accept the credit card thing. So that does happen. So it is enabled. But then, of course, you might not be able to what do you call use this credit
Go
card
to a
system.
bazaar and actually just buy things in the market.
Yep.
That's
Possibly if you go to a vegetable vendor or whatever, and you might not be able to actually pay him through your credit card. But the question is that most of the places, most of the larger places or large format stores will accept what you're doing. But having said that, the government of India is already saying, or at least the next thing for UPI is going to be that how am I able to enable transactions on international banking system? Because for this, a lot of interface between countries has to happen. So rather than, I think, I would rather say it's a process of globalization also, wherein people will start transactioning or people will start merging information flows across their systems. So if I'm able to, if the government of US agrees that, okay, now there is, or the government of India agrees that the transactions can actually happen on the banking system in real time, the information will get shared. It does happen. In fact, in a small way, like
yeah,
just
okay. So what I remember and my own personal experience, this was in China, and we had a car in a public parking lot, and it only accepted WeChat Pay when you tried to leave the lot, and no WeChat Pay, right? And so using a credit card was not an option there because it was too small a transaction, I guess. Although these days, credit cards are being used for almost microtransactions out here. But I think that Singapore, that India has done a good job of integrating this into existing online financial payment systems. So that what you've really done is expanding the range of people in the population who could benefit from the convenience of digital cash.
Oh, yes. But again, to your point, like when you talk about WeChat or things, I do not know which year did you face that problem, but as of today, I think there's a beautiful comment from Zhao on, if I pronounce the name correctly, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. So WeChat Pay already supports international credit cards. So there are
Okay,
those.
it didn't when I was there. It
Yes.
was a few years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So because
Okay.
I know those systems are changing. There's something very important, like that when you really talk about UPI, the adoption by other countries of UPI or enabling those transactions, it is going to make it cross-border. It is going to make a system when people are able to interact with each other. And any system for that matter, I think will never be perfect till the time we are able to talk to each other. And the systems are not able to talk to each other. So if they're able to do that,
So, yeah, Amit, kind of jumping to a different problem. Are you aware of anything that the government is doing to use artificial intelligence analysis of the kind of financial transactions that are being processed in order to find find criminal activity would be one thing, but what's the line between that and saving up money to do something bad in the future? Um, this is, at what point does this become something that the government could use against people fundraising for anti-government protests?
I think so that's again a very important question, because there is a very thin line between, because you have to be very sure the government does use AI without a doubt. I think today you're using systems to understand what is happening. So let me give you an example from the taxation system. So say when I file for my taxes, like there is a certain what do you call system that the money goes in or whatever. They know how I've been spending my money. But if there is a huge variation over a period of time, so the system will actually say, the AI system or the analytical system will say that there is something, uh, a blip here. There is something unique that you have done, or there's something different that you've done. So that system will raise an alarm, and that's the same thing that will happen on these transactions as well. The system will raise an alarm, but this is where that it is not that everybody's getting graded into or whatever, but uh, that is what you would call as a forensic ability of the system or the security system or the apparatus to really see what is happening. But it is being seen without a doubt. Today, uh, you can actually analyze, and it is an important thing, because I think being analyzed, if I'm spending, I'm part of the governmental system, and if it is for my safety, if my security is not getting compromised, if my what do you call, my information is not getting leaked, but if there is a system which is just keeping a map that, okay, now it does work. So that's where it is. So we also have to understand, from a democratic system, safety versus security versus individual information. But yes, the system is getting used to understand transactions and oddball transactions. And there have been instances, because you're mapping the system, you're also able to see as to where these phishing guys are. So you've been able to
Yeah,
locate them as well. So
yeah.
you're effectively able to stop some of those transactions as well, because you've seen those happen, or your system is telling you how it is happening.
So this is really India using quite advanced data storage technology and data management technology. I can only imagine the size of all the data stored through this system in a year, um, and in a very inclusive way, to really open up this to people who've been kind of left out of the system otherwise. Are there people who've had trouble adapting? Have you heard of, say, older people who just, they're ready to throw their phone in the trash because I can't make the thing work?
Of course. Like I'll say, like, no system for that matter is flawless. There are people who have felt flustered or frustrated with the system, because I think the biggest thing was that, when you say old people, I think senior citizens, for that matter, uh, they were initially very hesitant to go on the system, because I think there was this whole thing that my money is going to get extracted from the bank. There is no system, or because there was some because they were not realizing that if there is something that is getting leaked out of your system or of your bank account, is because you're making a mistake. So they had to be educated very clearly that it is a mistake from your end which enables those transactions to happen. Once they've understood it, that reservation to be on the system is, what I call, severely diminished. In fact, I can just tell you from my parents as well, because initially they were very hesitant to really move on to the system. But once they realized that it does work, it does give them the security, they've moved into those things. So in fact, but again, very importantly, a lot of people who directly moved on to the system, like, because they were never having a bank account, for them moving on to this was just because this was the first bank account that they actually ever encountered in their lives. For them, this was just second nature as well. So for people, I think the resentment or the reservations were coming from people who already had, or were on the banking system, not from people who were new onto the system. Because for them, it
Uh-huh.
was like fish taking to water. Because for them, it was a lot easier, because they just learned the banking thing on their mobile phones, not anywhere else. I some people like you and I, or whatever, we have learned the banking in terms of like going to the vendor, extracting the money. And then that reservation also is something very interesting. You'll be surprised, maybe, that, like, when I talk to my father-in-law, like, he tells, why do you want to go to the bank? Oh, that is one of the way of entertaining myself. That keeps me engaged, because I would like to go to the bank, talk to the vendor. He's been somebody I've known for 20 years or whatever. So
Yeah.
that is something like a more individual thing as well. So it's not that. So a lot of people look at these places as places of entertainment, or maybe some kind of conversations or whatever. So that's where it is.
So one of the areas where people are continuing to use cash is tipping,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting that it's not, at the lowest level establishment, the bottom of the pyramid. It's really at kind of hotels and taxis and whatever. A lot of that is still done by cash, right?
No, not really. In fact, if I actually use a service like, and let me share that with you. So if I use something like a Blinkit, or if I use a
Uh-huh.
service like Auto, which is a food delivery service, they give you an option. Would you like to add a tip?
To do the tip there. Yeah.
And I can add, and then I can do it through the system itself. So tipping does happen through the system. I think what happens is that if you're going to a hotel or whatever, and I think that will be odd behavior. Like if somebody gives his phone and say, "Would you like to tip?" I would hate doing that. Because then that will
Right.
just put. It is something like what is happening within the US. Sorry, I have to say this now. Like if you go to any US restaurant, if you're actually going through a drive-through or whatever, and somebody's taking an order and you say, "Would you like to tip?" Oh, I want to tip or I don't want to tip. It's not a matter of right. Now people are looking. So in India right now,
Yeah.
thankfully, tip is not seen as a matter of right. In US, it is being seen as a matter of right and extraction of money from the customer. So
Well,
that's
and
the
also an excuse for paying lower than minimum wage to people in those jobs. So,
absolutely. I think there's something wrong with that system because it's become obnoxiously annoying in the US system because I just pick up a cup of coffee and everybody thinks that you need to have a tip. Come on, no, not required.
so the other thing in when they were trying to get the system sort of off the ground, I'm not sure how much directly related to the rise of digital payments this is, but the government stopped not only issuing but stopped recognizing, was it 5,000 rupee notes,
2000.
banknotes? 2,000 rupee notes. Okay. Uh, the 500 note is still in use,
Yeah,
but
so
the larger banknotes have kind of stopped.
so the of course there were two parts to this. Like again, like one was of course the demonetization thing that had actually happened. That happened in 2016, or what you at that time the big large currency notes were effectively removed from the system overnight. Of course, that was a fairly it is up for debate whether it was a right decision or a wrong decision or whatever, uh, right or wrong. But what it did enable was that people were what do you call forced on to adopt a more digital lifestyle.
Yeah.
Um, because now what happened is that also put a scare in the head. And now recently, just last month, the 2000 rupee note has actually stopped getting issued by the government of India. And now they're saying that it is not, if you have that currency, it will work, but you'll have to take it to the system or whatever. They've not done a blanket one night thing, but they've removed it from the system. Effectively, it is out. So what they're doing is that they're disabling people from collecting hordes of money in terms of cash, and they're forcing people to move on to the digital payment system. And I think that that was done for a simple reason that we never knew what is the level of formalization or informality in the system. It now gives me some understanding as to what is the level of formality or informality that we have in the system. What is really the creation of wealth, if at all that is actually happening? What is the kind of money that somebody is making or whatever? Because this also helps me in understanding who requires benefits. Because there could always be a misrepresentation. I have seen people who are very well to do, and in the earlier avatar, they would actually go and register themselves for free food or whatever. And they were never deserving because there was no way of checking. But now you have a way of checking. I have a bank account which has a certain amount of money. If you are beyond that threshold, no, you will not get that support. And that is right. There's nothing wrong in that
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
benefits go to the needy, not for people. Because if I stand in the queue today, or if you say stand in the queue, you just can't do it. No, because we should buy for us or pay for our services.
So, question comes in from Ankit about whether there are plans of enabling international payments through UPI.
Yes.
The system itself could be copied in other countries, but what about doing international payments using this system?
So in a small way, it has already started. So what happens is like when I actually go to a place like Singapore or Dubai, there are 5 countries where I'm able to pay through my system. So it is enabling. In fact, now they're really talking about that. Okay, now how do I actually enable foreign transactions through the system? So if because of course there are certain laws which have to be taken care of. Say like as an individual, I cannot transfer or spend more than $250,000 a year in foreign currency. If I have to do beyond that, then I have to take a permission. Not that I'm disallowed, but on a clear, what is a liberal scheme, it is 250,000. So they will enable those kind of transactions to happen on the system fairly quickly. So
But do you think this would this ever be a threat to the international SWIFT banking system, the bank transfer system that's used now?
I think so. You will create. There would be a creation of an alternate system. It would happen, and I see it as like as I step back and as I look at it, and I'm now talking like an Indian. I'm not talking like an academic here. Let me talk for a
Yeah,
moment as
okay.
when I look at what happened, like so I'm not saying whether Ukraine or Russia was right, but what you were able to do was that you were able to create a blockade for a country on financial transactions. If, God forbid, India gets into a confrontation with somebody, and if that blockade happens, then what it does to us. So we need possibly a system that the blockade does not affect us. So that blockade is so what you would call as economic warfare. If at all economic warfare is going to be real in the future, can I actually create a system wherein economic warfare does not disable me as a country or disable my financial system? So this is possibly one of the ways of really removing that threat. And I think this is where it becomes important. I must also confess, I don't think government ever had this in mind when it started, because it started much before the Ukraine war and all these steps were taken much before that. But I'm just saying it that it possibility, as to your question, it does have a possibility of creating a parallel system. Swift is not going anywhere. In fact, even today, for that matter, when I'm doing my financial transactions internationally, it is going through the Swift system. The Swift codes are important and you need that. But at the end of the day, what do you call, you will want that parallel system to actually
So what if somebody has money in their UPI account in India? Could they transfer it to an account in the US, like a
not right
college
now.
student coming here? Okay.
Not right now, but it will get enabled over a period of time.
Okay, so it's stuck in India for now. Okay.
But yes, but you can transfer it through the just as a case in point, like initially, and I'm talking about 10 years back.
Mm-hmm.
10 years back, if I had to transfer money to US, I'll have to go to the what do you call the bank. I'll have to fill in tons of paper, and it'll take about 7 to 10 days for that transaction to happen. But now on the banking system, I can go to my bank site, I can just request for it, and it happens in 8 hours. So you've been able to move into that direction, and UPI, the government has already said that these transactions will get enabled, or they are trying to work on that system. So it will, if it is not happening now, it will happen in the next 18 to 24 months itself. But it is going to happen where foreign transactions are actually going to get enabled.
Okay. So I have a couple of important announcements. We'll end the formal session a little bit early and stay online for another 5 or 10 minutes and have a more informal where you can raise your hand and actually say things and talk, not just send things into the chat window. But first and very important announcement is we do not have a seminar next Tuesday, October 24. Yeah, the timing just didn't work out. We're having to take a bye week. We will resume our regular seminars on October 31 with Dylan, who is with a very interesting influencer marketing services company in South Korea. So thanks everybody for joining in, and we will keep the discussion going. But before I say turn off the recording, Amit, thank you for a great presentation. This was incredibly informative.
Thank you, Richard, for inviting me. It's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you.